I've said it a million times, and others have also said it repeatedly, but now is a great time to reflect on the huge benefit to the Cardano ecosystem because we didn't build this ecosystem with a lot of VC money. Sure, this came at a price. We can definitely chalk up some significant portion of the anti-Cardano bias in crypto to our lack of VC presence. Are they ever going to say anything nice or fair about Cardano when all of their money is invested in our competitors? Of course not. Will any of the crypto media who suckle at the VC teat? Also, of course not. We already paid that price. But on the flip side, we are also free. We have freedom from them ruling us like serfs in their little economic fiefdom. That's turning out to be not so true for our competitors. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss a big famous VC reportedly straight up dominating Uniswap governance, why some people are unhappy about it, why they may have taken the action they did, a new proposal in Liqwid governance, a great thread regarding building on Cardano if you have no prior programming experience, and Djed hitting a new benchmark. If you could immediately tell that this VC is stuck in a stuffed ballot box and that he has at least 3 extra fingers so that he can better squeeze dollars out of blockchain ecosystems, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. At this point in the development of crypto, a lot of people have already discovered firsthand why it's bad to be involved in a blockchain project where you have venture capitalists who hold a lot of the tokens or coins and are planning to dump on the heads of retail the first second they can. That's a pretty bad experience that a lot of people in crypto, I think, at this point have had. Not so much in the Cardano ecosystem. And I think we're all pretty happy about that. It has happened in Cardano. We have had VC funded projects, and some of them famously, we don't need to dwell on what happened there, but at least one of them very famously had this experience where the earlier investors than the sort of Cardano retail public, earlier investors were just getting unlocked like every month and just raining down coins on the open markets, destroying the value for the retail investors who were in there. We've all had that experience in crypto, and it's even happened in Cardano, but it hasn't happened very much at all in Cardano compared to a lot of other ecosystems. And that's because VCs hate us. Thank goodness they hate us. They hate us because they couldn't get in early on the base layer coin. They couldn't get in early on Cardano. They don't have positions in Cardano because there was no VC round in Cardano. IOHK, the foundation, Emergo, they just did a big coin offering in Japan under Japanese law, which was almost entirely Japanese investors, along with some other investors from other parts of Asia. But the entire offering happened in Japan. VCs, like those in Silicon Valley, were not involved in Cardano. This is a distinguishing feature of Cardano among blockchains, pretty much period, full stop. Almost every blockchain ecosystem, the first thing they do is they go out and line up a bunch of venture capitalists, all of whom are going to give them money and get big token allotments in exchange. And then they're going to have a certain unlock period. They're going to have this date down the road where they can unlock their coins. And often, there will be like, a certain arrangement, like none of the tokens unlock for X amount of months, and then a little bit unlocks, and then the next month a little bit unlocks. There's like very typical sort of unlock periods. So we've already experienced this. Most of us who've been around crypto for a while kind of know what happens economically, financially with VCs in crypto projects. And there's good reason in a lot of cases to avoid those. Sure, venture capital is not always bad in the world, in capitalism generally. It's kind of one of the accepted routes for startup ventures to access capital so that they can grow at a reasonable rate, so they don't have to totally bootstrap everything. There's a reason venture capitalists exist, and it's not all bad in capitalism in general. So that's the part that everybody already knows about and we talk about often. Here's the part that's a little less visible until it actually happens, until it actually matters. So here's a post that says, "You're being lied to about the governance of Uniswap, of Uni. A16Z," that's Andreessen Horowitz, "could control 41.5 million Uniswap through 11 wallets, which represents more than 4% of the supply. 4% is the required amount to pass any proposal." And here they kind of lay out those 11 wallets for you that make up that 4.15%. It's also interesting to note at this point that 9 of these 11 wallets have 0.25%, which is not a coincidence, according to this poster, who says 9 wallets ended up with a 0.25% of the supply each, 2.5 million uni, a calculated amount. That amount is required to submit a proposal to the governance of Uniswap. So what we see here is a bunch of wallets that are structured for voting. The way they're structured appears to be geared totally toward optimizing the proposing and passing of governance proposals. Here's why all that background matters. So Uniswap wants to bridge their V3 iteration over to BNB, and they have to choose which cross-chain bridge to use. The two candidates are Wormhole and Layer 0. They held a temperature check in their governance forums, and the temperature check indicated that the community wanted Wormhole. So that's not the final vote, though. The final vote is the actual vote. That was just a temperature check. So everybody was thinking, okay, we do have this large amount of Uni owned by A16Z, and A16Z didn't participate in the temperature check. So one person close to the project was quoted by The Block, who is being quoted by this poster here as saying, "If A16Z goes against community vote and tries to tank it, I'd be shocked. That would be truly abhorrent, and I don't think they would go that far." So, of course, they eventually did have that vote. And what do we see? A16Z coming in with 15 million votes against the proposal that the community was in favor of in the temperature check. They were not going for it. And why is that the case? That is the case for this reason laid out by this poster right here. A16Z just used its full voting weight to squash a Uni proposal to launch Uniswap protocol on BNB using Wormhole Crypto Bridge. A16Z is a large investor in Wormhole competitor Layer 0 Labs. Open your eyes. Anti-competition cartels in DeFi are real. And here's the headline from CoinDesk back in March of 22 saying A16Z, FTX, and Sequoia lead 135 million round for Layer 0 at 1 billion valuation. If you've got that much money tied up in a bridge and a protocol whose governance you can control through your token holdings is looking like it's going to vote in favor of a competitor and you're a VC, what are you going to do? You're going to come in and throw your weight around, use all your VC tokens to vote the other way, even if the community doesn't want it. Here's how the original temperature check looked. Wormhole got a little over 62% of the vote. Layer 0 got almost 38% of the vote. But when a VC like A16Z has such a big block of votes, if they can, they're just going to come in and sort of erase this. Just sort of erase whatever the community was actually voting for. And they're just going to go in the direction they want to go, which, I mean, we can all guess. They're VCs for a reason. It's always going to be in their economic best interest, regardless of what the community wants. This is why you can't have gigantic concentration of token ownership in entities that aren't going to be aligned with the community. And I mean, let's face it, VCs predictably aren't going to be aligned with the community in a lot of cases. This is the perfect case. The community wants to use some third-party provider of something, in this case, a cross-chain bridge. They have to pick out a cross-chain bridge project to use. Of course, the VC is going to vote for whatever cross-chain bridge they're invested in, whatever third-party provider they're invested in. That's the one they're going to vote for, whether it's the best or not. whether it's what the community wants or not, whether it's what's best for the community or not. They're going to vote in their own economic best interest. They're VCs. That's what they do. This is why it's bad to have VCs owning big enough chunks of a protocol to control the governance. And it's exactly why the Cardano community is so anti-VC. I mean, that along with the whole dumping on the heads of retail every chance they get thing. Speaking of governance proposals, there have been a few governance proposals in Liqwid that people might be interested in. These are sort of in response to the alarm that some people have expressed about the emissions schedule of the LQ token. And the emission schedule of the LQ token generally has been around for a long time. I think something like a year. I saw somebody say it's been like a year. I read that somewhere, and that matches my recollection. I mean, the that 3-year emission schedule had been around for a long time, and they actually did change that 3-year part just going back a few days ago, and then this proposal came out even more recently. So here's the proposal that came out 6 days ago. And one of the big things it changes is the emission schedule on user distributions. You'll remember we looked at the white paper that had that 36-month distribution to people either being lenders or borrowers on the platform. So this section right here changes that. User distribution, incentives to lenders and borrowers will be distributed over 48 months, and the allocation key will be based on the amount of interest paid each day by the borrowers in each market. It'll be a 50-50 split between the suppliers and the borrowers, and they go on and have a lot more detail. But so they changed that user distribution schedule from 3 years to 4 years. And you can see in this distribution, they also have the MinSwap collective Zappin event, and they have some DEX liquidity tokens being issued here. So 3% to the MinSwap CZI, 1% to the DEX liquidity incentives. They're trying to create liquidity on DEXs so that people can more readily trade the token and access greater liquidity. But of course, there's been some price action in the LQ token since the launch of the platform. Here's the CMC page for LQ. And people have made a lot of noise on Cardano Twitter looking at this change in price since, the last week of January when we were clear up here until when was it? Just a couple days ago, we were clear down here. And there's been a little bit of a recovery here or there, but people got pretty animated in a negative way when we were down here in that red zone. This, of course, should not be a surprise to anyone who listens to this channel because multiple times prior to the Liqwid platform actually launching, I talked about the tiny amount of Liqwid tokens that were in public circulation compared to the giant amount that would start being issued as soon as the platform launched. So then Liqwid posted this, a proposal by DC to reduce the LQ token emissions in response to recent community feedback is live on the governance forums. Here's that proposal where they basically say the LQ token emission schedule has been public for over a year. However, the core dev team met this afternoon following a review of the community's feedback to this amendment and the MinSwap CZI. Ultimately, we agree that if the community is by majority requesting for lower token emissions at launch, this is exactly what we should pivot to. This is exactly what you want to see, right? Not that Uniswap case where a giant VC comes in and basically just tells everybody what's going to happen because they have all the tokens and they can vote. Here we have a Cardano project, which also does have, I believe, some VC investment, but it's not working the same way. Here, the community, even though the insiders, the project founders and core devs, I assume, wanted to go in a certain direction with this MinSwap collective Zappin thing and providing the liquidity to the DEXs, the community seemed to overwhelmingly want something different. So they're pivoting and going in the direction the community wants. This is, if you're a normal retail participant in an ecosystem like this is what you really want to see. Not that Uniswap scenario. You want to see this scenario where the project is actually listening to their community and the community's voice actually matters in the direction of the project. This is exactly what you'd want to see. So you can see they're making 3 big changes: cancel the MinSwap collective Zappin event and DEX liquidity incentives, make the user distribution, that's the LQ protocol incentives, exclusive to lenders and borrowers in the ADA and Cardano stablecoins markets, and partner with SundaySwap to make use of their rewards distribution solution for LQ staking and protocol incentives. So you end up with this distribution looks like this, and it looks like so far they've received 55% of the vote. So not that overwhelming like tide of voters, not a tsunami of voters voting in favor of this, just a 10% margin, which is kind of interesting because if you looked at the sentiment on crypto Twitter, you would think that this vote will be much higher. But I think there's definitely a gap between people who are willing to voice criticism on Twitter versus people who are actually willing to go into a governance forum and vote. But in any case, much credit to LQ for listening to Liqwid. I should say Liqwid. I just named their token, but much credit to the Liqwid team for listening to the community and pivoting, even if they'd already made a decision going in just a slightly different direction. Here's a great thread from Imperator Lang addressing a question that I think comes up a lot in Cardano. They say, we've received many questions about how to start building on Cardano with no prior programming experience. Below, some pointers and thoughts. They say, at the current state of the ecosystem, programming is definitely required to build on Cardano. No copy and paste projects like on Ethereum. But biased opinion, Python is a great language to start programming. It is very forgiving, readable, and intuitive. Therefore, building with Python is the recommended way of entering or starting, by them at least. There are great tools to build with Python on Cardano. PyCardano lets you programmatically perform everything from basic transactions to interacting with smart contracts. Eopsin is a language to write smart contracts or validators in Python directly, however. It is highly recommended to explore the great developer page to understand how Cardano works. UTXOs, validators, etc. are complex but elegant. This should be considered. Of course, there are many tools that are both practical and educational for developers. Use the above pointers as starting points, not as complete guides. Not to forget the vast resources that can get you up and running with Python. Here's an overview over free non-programmer books that teach Python without any prerequisites required. So there you go. If you want to get into building stuff on Cardano, but you have no programming experience, instead of going through what someone called the harrowing experience of learning Haskell, especially as someone who doesn't have any experience with programming, you could instead just learn Python, which will have much greater applicability outside of Cardano than Haskell might. I know many Haskell diehards would dispute me on that, but I think we could say there are probably a lot more opportunities for Python programmers than for Haskell in the general world. Having said that, please don't misunderstand me. I do love Haskell. In my very short amount of time where I was attempting to become the world's worst Haskell beginner, I think I achieved that. I think I was then and am still the world's worst Haskell beginner. I think Haskell is very interesting and probably worth learning just as an intellectual endeavor, just because it's so interesting. Functional programming in general is so interesting. But if we're talking about something that is more applicable to the outside world, Python doesn't sound like a bad idea, especially if you can use it now to build things on Cardano. Finally, a quick update from Djed after their launch week. They say there is now over 30 million ADA locked in the Djed smart contract. We're just getting started. And there you have the number, 30 million ADA locked in the contract. Looks like they're at a 620% reserve ratio there, which is kind of in that happy band between 400 and 800. This is good news. It's good news that we can launch a stablecoin in the Cardano ecosystem and get $30 million in it in just pretty much its launch week. I hope you had a fun and great weekend, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.